I want to give you a hypothetical scenario. You've got a really important presentation coming up for work. There's going to be a lot of important people there, and you need to nail this presentation in order to not only help the company out, but help your career, because your career is on thin ice if this doesn't go well, especially because the last presentation you did was not that good. So you want to practice your presentation, and one of the best ways to do that is to go into the room where the presentation is, get used to your environment, and do a dry run through there. You want to be in the room where it happens. Makes total sense, right? If you need to do the presentation well, you should probably practice the presentation. Well, the company does not like this. They find out that you're using the room to practice the presentation and tell you to get out, saying that you can't be in there. Find somewhere else to do it because you can't do it in here. Keep in mind, that room isn't being used for anything else, and there is nowhere else to practice the presentation, so this wouldn't make a ton of sense. You're completely and utterly screwed. The company just screwed you over from trying to practice and get better at your job, which seems counterintuitive and absolutely sucks for you. Well, I bring that up because this man right here that you've been watching this entire time is Mingo, the kicker on the Miami Dolphins. But before he got to the Dolphins, in these clips, the kicker of the Denver Broncos. When Don Shula took over the team in 1970, what followed was years upon years of success where the team made the playoffs a ton, never outright stunk, and could always be counted on to be in the running. Prior to Don Shula, though, the team was kind of a mess, and that was especially true in their very first season in 1966. Because all Mingo wanted to do was be a good kicker like he was at the start of his career, and the Dolphins couldn't even let him do that. And it's a bizarre controversy that deserves a deep dive roughly 6 decades later, because I highly doubt with the way teams operate today that something like this could ever happen again. Because this is the story behind Mingo and the kicker who was sabotaged by his own team. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one that you might not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff and you want to join this community, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing and helping us out. And with that in mind, let's talk about the controversy surrounding the kicker where Mingo was his name-o. Before I talk about the actual incident in question, we need some context to understand not just how the previous game went for the Dolphins, as in their very first game in franchise history, but who Mingo was and what he was doing before he became a Dolphin kicker. His backstory is kind of fascinating, to the point where I don't have time for it all in this one video, as the man made it onto the Denver Broncos in 1960, despite not playing a single down of college football. He was literally on the verge of getting cut by the Broncos in 1960 after missing a field goal in practice, but he begged the coaching staff for a second chance, drilled that kick and every kick after that, and at that point, a star was born, as Mingo became the first black kicker in the history of professional football, with another black kicker not joining the league until 2.5 decades later. In many ways, Mingo was a pioneer, and it also helped that the man was legitimately a great player, and is in the Denver Broncos Ring of Fame for his contributions to the team. Mingo led the entire AFL in field goal percentage in 1960, and led the AFL in field goals made in both 1960 and 1962, being named an All-Star and a second-team All-Pro during that 1962 campaign. And while he was primarily known as a kicker, Mingo did a lot of other things for the Broncos too, as you're watching right now. Who scored the first punt return touchdown in Broncos history, scoring what turned out to be the game-winning touchdown during the team's first game of the season against the Boston Patriots? None other than Mingo, in a game that you learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. Who led the Broncos in rushing touchdowns in 1960? It was their kicker, Mingo. Who led the Broncos in rushing touchdowns in 1962? Once again, it was their kicker, Mingo. It's kind of amazing just how much Mingo could do with the Broncos and how versatile he was. He truly was an exceptional player. Unfortunately for him, right in the middle of a very good 1964 season where he led the AFL in field goal percentage, he was released following a combination of a bed check gone wrong and racial relations, as this was the 1960s, and unfortunately, there were different standards for white players versus black players. And the coaching staff, even despite Mingo's talents, were never too high on him, partly due to racial reasons. This began the downfall for Mingo by his own admission, both in his personal life and on the field. And after a poor season in 1965 with the Oakland Raiders, where he was nowhere close to the kicker he once was, going just 8 for 19 on field goals and converting only 42% of the time, this man right here, the ever-versatile Gene Mingo, found himself on the Miami Dolphins in 1966, with Miami hoping that he would refine his form, regain his confidence, and be a worthy player for their first kicker in franchise history. Heck, he was the first ever kicker in Denver Broncos franchise history, and that worked out pretty well. He knew a thing or two about being the first guy with a golden boot. Maybe he could do that again. With that, we head down to the Orange Bowl for this game right here, as in the very first game of the season, as on Friday, September 2nd, 1966, the Oakland Raiders took on the Miami Dolphins in the first game in Dolphins franchise history. You'll want to start the season off on the right foot and give the home fans something to cheer about for the first game ever. And unfortunately for the Dolphins, like most expansion teams in their first game, they could not do that. Not even close. Because when the final gun went off and the final whistle sounded, the Raiders were victorious, as despite a touchdown on the opening kickoff by the Dolphins, it was not enough, as the Raiders won it by 2 possessions, taking it 23-14. This was an extremely sloppy game that the Dolphins did not even look the slightest bit competent in. They looked like an expansion team in so many ways. Miami fumbled the ball 5 times and threw 5 interceptions, with starting quarterback Dick Wood going 4 for 13, completing just 30% of his passes for 49 yards, no touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and a passer rating of 3.8, which is worse if it did nothing but spike the ball into the ground on every single play. Seriously, his passer rating was a 3. The scale goes all the way up to 158.3. The league average today is above a 92. The league average in 1966 was a 63. And during this game, Wood was hovering around a 3. The Dolphins' defensive line generated no pressure, picking up 0 sacks. And when one team has triple the passing yards that you do, that usually does not bode well for you. It's no surprise why the Dolphins lost this game, and it set the tone for the 1966 season. Not that anyone had any expectations for Miami in 1966, seeing as they were an expansion team, and expansion teams never did well. But this game was definitely a sign of things to come, as they started the year off with an 0-5 record and finished just 3-11. But of all the reasons why they lost this game right here, and trust me, there were many, from the lack of pressure to the inability to hold on to the football to the awful quarterback play, the biggest one might have come not on offense or on defense, but on special teams. Yes, the game started off with a bang on special teams, with Joe Auer returning the opening kickoff 95 yards for a touchdown. You can learn more about him and his career with the Dolphins by clicking the card in the upper right corner, because trust me, it's a bizarre career. But after that, oh man, the special teams was downright atrocious. And the main culprit? You guessed it, these plays right here from Gene Mingo. He had a chance against his former team, the Raiders, to show why they made a mistake getting rid of him. He did not take advantage of that chance, as he missed all 3 field goal attempts, with 2 of these kicks being absolute chip shots. Missing from 43 yards out? Not the biggest deal back then. In the AFL in 1966, kickers only made 35% of their kicks from between 40 to 49 yards, so you can't hate on Mingo too much for that. But missing kicks from 19 yards and 17 yards out? Missing kicks from well inside the red zone? Yeah, that sucks. No way around it, that sucks. Those kicks are chip shots today. Not that a 17-yard field goal was even possible today with how the goalposts are lined up. And those kicks were chip shots back in 1966. Not only did this mean that Mingo was starting off his Dolphin career 0 for 3 on field goals, but it meant that dating back to the end of September of 1965, Mingo was just 3 for his last 16, kicking the ball through the uprights. I don't think I need to tell you that when over the course of 12 months, you're hitting field goals successfully just 18% of the time, you're in a funk. Doesn't matter the era, that's really freaking bad. It got to the point where even head coach George Wilson had to answer a question about Mingo, to which he replied, "Gene Mingo did a good job for us in preseason and has been a consistent place kicker the last 6 seasons in the AFL. Let's say that these things happen sometimes and let it go at that. Mingo feels bad enough and doesn't need a reminder." Side note, I love the answer to that question and how snarky it is. Coach, why did Mingo struggle? It's none of your business. He's a good kicker and he feels bad enough about missing. Let's just move on. That's always a good sign when you get the dreaded vote of confidence after one game. Anyways, when it came to this man right here, Mingo was in a rough spot, and he wanted to practice kicking the ball through the uprights. So, he did what any kicker would do in this spot. He found the field and just started kicking footballs. Seems like the natural thing to do, right? You're in a funk offensively in basketball, you go to the gym and put up a bunch of shots. You're in a funk offensively in baseball, you go to the batting cages. You're in a funk with your irons in golf, you go to the driving range. And Gene Mingo, a few days after the game, went into the Orange Bowl to get some kicks off and find his rhythm again. Keep in mind that for some reason, the Dolphins' practice field did not have goalposts. Why their practice field had no goalposts, seeing as kicking is a pretty important part of the game, and seeing as goalposts seem like an important thing to have on a pro football field, I don't know. So kicking on the practice field was out of the equation. Mingo would have to go to the Orange Bowl, the venue that haunted him on Friday in that 3 field goal disaster against the Raiders, to regain his form and find his rhythm as he did all those years ago in Denver. And the Dolphins' response to that? They were furious. They weren't furious at Mingo for missing those field goals. Rather, they were furious that Mingo was on the field at the Orange Bowl. Because when the groundskeeper saw what Mingo was doing, or at least trying to do, he was shooed out of the stadium, saying, "Yeah, you can't be here." You see, the groundskeepers wanted to keep the field in top condition for the team's next game, a Friday night outing against the New York Jets, which, spoiler alert, the Dolphins lost 19-14. And they couldn't have the literal kicker of the Dolphins trying to get field goals off. Never mind the fact that he was doing this on a Tuesday. The game was on a Friday, and there was plenty of time to patch up any issues that could have risen. Never mind the fact that a few years later, the Orange Bowl, I kid you not, tried to have 2 games take place on the same day, trying to have a date where both an HBCU game and a Dolphins game would occur. I don't know about you, but that seems like a lot of wear and tear. Gene Mingo was not allowed to kick field goals. He couldn't kick at the practice field because there were no goalposts there. He couldn't kick on the field of the Orange Bowl because the groundskeepers didn't allow it. Mingo was screwed. It's the catch-22. You stink, so you need to practice field goals. You try to practice field goals, and you're not allowed to do so. It's like the paradox of wanting to hire a kid straight out of college for a job, but requiring that kid to have 20 years of experience. It's not possible. Always a good sign when you, as the kicker of a team, are prevented by your own team and members associated with your team in some capacity from actually doing your job and trying to improve your craft. And that was a sign of things to come for Mingo and his time with the Dolphins, which did not go anywhere close to his time in Denver. In 1966, Mingo continued to struggle as he finished the season hitting just 47% of his field goals and hitting just 50% of his kicks from inside 30 yards. The league average from inside 30 yards was 68%, and Mingo was well below that. For some perspective on how poor Mingo was from inside 30 yards in 1966, I looked at every kicker from that season to attempt at least 5 kicks from inside 30 yards. Every single kicker was at least 60% or better, except for one. That one man, Gene Mingo, who was basically in a stratosphere of stink all by himself. He was probably the worst kicker in the American Football League. It's hard to blame him. seeing as he was literally not allowed to practice field goal kicking and could do nothing to get better. He was sabotaged by his own team. It's like the Dolphins in the Orange Bowl literally did not want him to be any good. And unsurprisingly, Mingo, after another rough season in 1967, where he went just 1 for 6 on his attempts, was off the team midway through the year before struggling in Washington and Pittsburgh in the NFL. Mingo was a great Broncos kicker, but his time with the Dolphins? Well, that got off to a rough start in more ways than one, both on the field and off the field when he tried to get on the field and could not. So, as a lesson to any teams watching this video for whatever reason, if your kicker wants to practice kicking field goals after a rough game and wants to find his form again, it's probably a good idea to let him. Unless you have a good reason not to, as in a medical reason, like you risk aggravating something or getting a tired leg, personal gripes are probably not a good reason to prevent a player from trying to improve. Because in 1966, when it came to this man right here in Mingo, a lot of his kicks in Miami were a no-go. Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.